When I was growing up, I was a big fan of Hollywood. Of course, in recent years, I've learned that Hollywood has gone completely woke, and I kind of limit where I watch. And when I say kind of, the last movie I saw at the theaters was Top Gun, of course, and then prior to that, I couldn't even tell you. It's been years. But there's one guy who has been kind of an inspiration because he has bucked the trend of going woke all through Hollywood. He has been able to, throughout his career, be very, very successful while still maintaining a strong political view. And his political views will range sometimes depending on whether you're talking about social issues or economic issues or socialism or anything like that. But in one way, he is extraordinarily aligned with what we do here at the America First movement. I'm very blessed, pleased and honored to have a very prominent man joining us today. His name is Dean Cain. Dean, how are you doing, sir?
I'm very well. How are you today?
Oh, I am great. I am fantastic. Things are looking up. Well, not really, but at least we can hope that they're looking up. All right.
Things are trending in the right direction.
Trending in the right direction. Sure. I think we were all expecting some really big things in November, and that didn't materialize, and I don't want to talk about it. So
it hurts a little bit there, no doubt. Would have been nice to take the Senate, but we do have the House, and having the House, and there are a lot of people fighting with Speaker McCarthy. I happen to know him and I like him. He's a politician, yeah. So those things that happen, but so far he's off to a good start. He's I think he's coming out well, and those 20 other Republicans who sort of held up things for a while there got their spots on committees, and I think it's going to be an interesting 2 years.
Everybody came out pretty well in that whole regard. I'm not a huge fan of McCarthy, but I am totally willing to give him a chance. And so far, hey, I call it the way it is. I've been pleasantly surprised. Okay, so we'll see how it goes. Maybe
pleasantly surprised is a
good
spot to be.
Very good. Absolutely. You are an actor. You're a producer, a director, a writer. Your adult career after leaving the Buffalo Bills, your career has been really just a storybook in many ways. You've been able to do a whole lot, but you fought against woke culture even before it became known as woke culture in Hollywood. Knowing that, you have also spoken out against socialism, communism, just the rise of neo-Marxism in general. Have you seen in your travels through Hollywood, have you seen any direct influence from, say, like the Chinese Communist Party or the World Economic Forum or any of the various wokesters out there?
All these global elites, if you will, in that sense, for the World Economic Forum. That thing to me, it just is terrifying. It's straight James Bond villain, Klaus Schwab. It's terrifying. I mean, like, you couldn't create a better James Bond villain than Klaus Schwab. It's crazy. For myself personally, I haven't seen a lot of influence from the CCP myself, but I've been over there. I've actually there's a movie I want to make over there that it's a World War II epic that takes place in Shanghai. And in order to do that, I would have to work with the Chinese Communist Party. But in this particular film, the Chinese come off very well because that's the story, not because I was going to change it. You talked about earlier, the last movie you had seen was Top Gun Maverick, and there was a big hullabaloo about that because there was Chinese money apparently in that or in one of the companies. And so he removed the Taiwan sticker and a Taiwan patch on his flight jacket, on his bomber jacket, and that was a big deal. But it went back in, and that film was very, very pro-America, and it sort of bucked the woke culture in the end. Whoever made that decision, if it's Tom Cruise, God bless him, and he has a lot to say on his films. But whoever made that decision did something very, very right, and I applaud it. I'm sure there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than I can see because Hollywood is a very prostitutional-like organization. I don't know if prostitutional-like is a word, but I didn't want to call them prostitutes. But in a sense, if there's money there, they'll make that deal and they'll scream and talk about values and morals. But at the same time, if there's a lot of money, the values and morals can go over here, and then we'll just make sure we get this done. That happens a lot in Hollywood. There's lots of nefarious types like that. Then there's also some very virtuous folks, like 4 of them.
Absolutely. You have said about yourself, and in the past, you've said that when it comes to social issues, you're kind of a leftist. I look at more as a liberal, a true liberal in the sense of liberty.
Classic.
You know, hey, somebody wants to be gay, they can be gay, basically.
Yes,
right?
sir.
But I've noticed in recent weeks, recent months, recent years, I guess you can take it back, that you've engaged on more of a conservative angle from a cultural perspective, you know, looking at all this rampant wokeness, looking at the supremacy agenda of some of the more far left aspects of quote unquote freedom. Is this a shift in you, or do you think that it's a shift where you know they were at one point fighting for gay rights, and now it's like they're fighting for something bigger, badder, worse? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, well, there was a time where it was a gay rights fight, and I have a lot of friends who are gay. I'm in Hollywood. I mean, every third person is probably gay, and some of my great friends are gay. And I've played gay in a couple films. Listen, if that's what an adult wants to do, great, but don't start dictating to other people how they have to use your pronouns, and don't try to indoctrinate children. Being a father changed everything for me. My son is now 22 years old. And if some of these folks that I see on libs of TikTok, if I would have seen them in my son's classroom and listened to the things they were saying, we would have had a huge problem. It's not what you're supposed to be here to teach my child. And I'll be in class every single day. I will be there every day if this is what's going on. Or I'll yank him out. I did end up yanking him out and putting him in a private Christian school, because that's where I felt he was going to get the morals and the values that I wanted him to listen to and to experience, and, you know, go to chapel and have these conversations and hear all this stuff. Give him a framework from which he can operate from virtue, as opposed to, you know, some of these woke things that are going on. I mean, I can't even get close to following there was something I posted yesterday about someone saying, this is Sierra and my and when I talk about clown self, it's clown this. I'm like, what the heck? My head exploded. Clown self? I mean, what I don't get it. We've gone too far in that respect for sure. But listen, I am in that sense, I'm very libertarian. I mean, like, seriously, do what you want to do as an adult. Go ahead. Have a blast. If you're an adult and you want to experience, gender changing surgery, go ahead, but don't force it on a 7-year-old. Don't put it on an 18-year-old. Well, 18, you can do what you want. If you're 18, you want to do it, I'm going to advise you against it, but you can do what you want because you're considered an adult. Okay. But pushing this on younger kids, and there is a very clear agenda by many. You saw what happened in Florida about the gay couple that were running a prostitution ring and a child sex ring and abusing and raping their own children. And they were the face of, no hate. Are you kidding me? That's the most hateful thing that could happen. I don't want to tell you what I'm also a law enforcement officer. So I can't tell you, and I work against child predators. I can't, what I want to do to them, I can't, it's not legal and I wouldn't, but I'd be tempted because it's absolutely terrible. And that stuff should not be around our children.
Well, I think any good father would be tempted, and some of them would actually have to follow through depending upon what was being done. And considering everything that is being done to our children in modern American society, this post-truth society that we find ourselves in, I wouldn't blame you. Speaking of fatherhood, you have become, I would say, one of the rare, I don't want to say icons, but you've been exemplary in your pursuit of being a good father. You considered your biological father to not be a very good father. Thankfully, you were adopted by a wonderful man who taught you values, who taught you ins and outs, and you swore that you were going to be a good father. And now your 22-year-old son, I think, would attest that you have been very active in his life. What is your thought as far as fatherhood in America? We can always say that, look, we've got these problems with teachers, we got these problems with government, we got these problems here or there. I've always said that one of the biggest problems, if not the biggest problem, as far as driving rampant crime, driving this weirdness that's happening, is the lack of fathers in America that are active in their children's lives. What do you say about that, sir?
I say that's completely 100% correct. Having a strong father growing up, and I called my father Dad. From the moment I guess I met him. I was 3 when I met him, and I was just like, Dad. A lot of heat on him. Bless him. You don't want to go on your first date with a woman and have the kid start calling you Dad right away. It's a little presumptive. A friend of mine, Alec Lace, does a podcast called First Class Fatherhood. And he came to me way at the beginning, the fledgling part of this, and said, hey, I see you really care about being a father. I talk about these things. And I said, absolutely, I'll come on and talk about it. having lived through a situation where I'm so appreciative to have a father, and looking at all the tough moments of my life, and having my father there and his advice, and when I was straying from what I should be doing, which we all do, he was there. And having that strong fatherly figure was the greatest influence on my life. I named my son after him because of that influence. And my son is my best friend. He is my favorite human being on this planet. I talk to him, not every single day because he's in college in North Carolina, but I talk to him pretty often, and every conversation ends with, "I love you, talk to you later." Okay. In front of his friends, I'll hug him and kiss him in front of his friends. He is he's imperfect, as we all are, but he is such a wonderful human being. I'm so proud to be in his life. But, listen to like Denzel Washington talk about, if the father's not in the household, the streets become the father, and they learn those values and things. And he pushes for fatherhood. He happens to be my favorite actor and someone who I consider a friend. And I was able to work opposite him in a film called Out of Time. And he is, I think, the best actor of this generation by far. And he's my favorite actor. But he talks about that, and it's really prevalent in Black homes. And it's unfortunate. It's terrible. Larry Elder, a good friend of mine, talks about the fatherhood problem all the time. And I know, because my teammates, a lot of my friends, or, we go to their house for Christmas or something, or Thanksgiving, and there's no father in the house. It's grandma and mom. It's grandma doing a lot of the raising. And that's just, we have too much of that here in the United States. Fathers are, and part of it, look, I had to fight really hard to be a father. I had to fight my son's mother to get joint custody of my son. It cost me $1.5 million in legal fees here in California, because something called the California Equal Footing Law, they call, because I could afford any attorney, therefore so could she, and I get to pay for it. I changed my career to be a father because I know how important it was to me. There are a lot of people, listen, the easy thing, and people get very angry, fathers do this and go, "Screw this, I'm out. You're going to make it this tough for me to be a father." And I can understand that perspective, but it's the most valuable thing in the world. And if you're doing something from the government level, you should be doing things to encourage fatherhood, not encourage single moms to be on welfare and to divorce the father and marry the government. And unfortunately, that's what these compassionate social programs have done.
Well, since you brought up economic issues, you talked about college. I think a lot of times people say, "Oh, Hollywood." You went to Princeton, okay? You didn't just go to like some community college and study acting, and the difference between the sun and the moon, unlike certain people in Hollywood. So
figured it out at age 40.
You did figure it out by age 40. Good job there. So, and you majored in history, and of course, we are seeing, historically speaking, we're making history every day with this economy. From your perspective, I know you're not an economist per se, but you're a very brilliant man. What do you see? I mean, are we looking towards an economic downturn, recession? Are we looking towards economic collapse, perhaps? What's our future hold?
Well, you look at Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum, you listen to John Kerry talking about this select group of people can save the world and all this sort of weirdness. And you realize if you're just a regular person on the street, you don't have a shot. They're going to rig the rules. President Trump said it when he was running. He says, "How do I know the system is rigged? Because I use the system, and the system works for those at the very top, and they make the rules." Hillary Clinton's making the rules and those tax laws and those things. It's terrifying as a regular everyday person. I'm not an economist. I've invested a lot of money in housing. I happen to own a number of homes. I'm smart about it. I'm not ostentatious about things. I just think, look, when in 1973 or 71, when I forget what it was, I was alive when President Nixon pulled us off the gold standard. That changed everything, because what backs our money now? What backs it? And that's a scary thought. I like, something tangible. I like houses. I like gold and silver. I think those are, you see the commercials on TV all the time. You see it going on. What is that about? What is that about? And for a great example, I have a, 1924 $20 gold piece right here. I don't know if you can see that. There it is. And in 1924, this gold piece, this $20 gold piece could buy you a brand new top of the line, custom made tailored suit. Awesome. Now, if that was $20, a $20 bill could have bought you the same thing. Now, this thing here could still buy you that brand new tailor-made suit but $20 would buy you 2 cups of coffee. So that's the difference. And something like gold. So there's a funny saying with gold is like, you don't wait to buy gold. You buy gold and wait. And so things like that, when you look at a government, it's terrifying to me because I live in California. So first of all, I can't be that intelligent to just use you as well. I mean, the taxes and the property taxes, and you're getting hit with every tax in the world. And, when the federal government is just printing money, quantitative easing, all they're doing is reaching in every single person's pocket and making that dollar worth less. That's all they're doing. And it drives me bananas when I hear the government, Joe Biden, say, well, I spent more money and blah, blah, blah. You spent more of our money to do this or that. That's not where I would choose to spend it. So it makes me crazy. So that's why I like property. That's why I like gold. And I think that during a time like this, I tweeted, I don't know how long ago, a year ago or a year and a half ago, about we're in a recession. And by all other measures, if we ever measured it by the same criteria as we've measured it in the past, we're in a recession. But now they change the terms, so when they're constantly changing terms. It's not a recession. I didn't lie. I misremembered, or whatever it happens to be. They're just changing terms left and right. We're in a recession. I'm terrified of what the government does. I'm terrified of the idea of a digital currency, a social credit score. These things terrify me. Crypto used to be, people were talking about crypto being like, okay, we'll just invest in crypto. And it's a thing that everybody likes it because the government couldn't regulate it. And all of a sudden, Sam Bankman-Fried oddness just torpedoes it, and it's gone. It's lost like 65% of its value since I guess this year. I mean, it's crazy. So I look for things that are long-term. People go like, how did you end up doing okay? I changed my whole career when I have fought to be a father, to have custody of my son. And I couldn't take work out of Los Angeles. I couldn't take the lead in any series. I couldn't do a movie that lasted over 3 weeks. And I chose that to be a father. But I also invested intelligently. And I'm terrified by the way things are going on. The reason I can survive and do things is because I've been smart with my money, and I encourage others to do the same.
Well, the best way they can do that, in my humble opinion, we were introduced by a mutual friend, Jonathan Rose, over at Genesis Gold Group. And I know that I work with him. Obviously, you can go to genesispreciousmetals.com and work with Jonathan directly, as both Dean and I do. But here's the thing, when we're looking at all of these changes that are happening in the economy, there was a time when I wasn't into gold. And I know that for a lot of us, we thought, the economy's great. Trump's got this covered. Well, Trump's not there. The economy's not great, and it's heading in the wrong direction. So I know that I strongly encourage people to go to genesispreciousmetals.com to talk there, or to not talk to talk to somebody. You can fill out a form, you can give them a call. It's good stuff. You've recently started working with Jonathan over at Genesis Gold Group. How's that going? I mean, how's the company?
Oh, the company's fantastic. So Jonathan and I knew each other for a while before we ever discussed any of this stuff. And he kept listening to me talk and hear the things I say. And, he's like, I work in gold and precious metals and things. And so it sounds like a lot of the things you say really align with what we say all the time. So let's talk about this. And we started talking about it. I was like, the things we talk about really align. I happen to be Christian. The Russ, do you see the thing on the Russian Orthodox hockey player who didn't want to wear the gay pride shirt? Now, listen, I'm all for gay rights, but this guy is it's like, ask a Muslim to do it, right? That's not, they won't do it. It's against their religion. This guy's Russian Orthodox. He didn't want to do it. I happen to be Christian. We were talking about Christianity and some other things. And he said, then Jonathan started talking about, hey, listen, the values and the things you talk about are exactly what we talk about at Genesis Gold Group. So come over and have a chat. Maybe we could work together. And because these things, it's not like I have to stretch to align with their values. So we line right up. And then I went in there and met everybody. And what a great group. I would feel so comfortable, and I do feel so comfortable having a number of a percentage of my assets in gold, especially at this time, gold and silver. It's a no-brainer. When government is out of control and when you're in a recession, when they're printing money, inflation's out of control, it's a no-brainer. You look at people's IRAs and their 401ks, they're dropping in value. That's terrifying. There's people who are trying to live on that. All of a sudden, you're worth less. You're worth 20% less. Congratulations. What happened? Government changed some policies. You've done nothing different, and so that's why gold and silver is a great hedge. And I love that.
It is a great hedge. I have one final question for you. And I do, once again, people go to genesispreciousmetals.com. Listen to Dean Cain. He knows what he's talking about. One final question for you, sir. Well, first, before I get to that, did you hear that Alec Baldwin is getting criminally charged?
I literally saw it on my TV, I guess, for they say he might be charged for negligent homicide. No.
Involuntary manslaughter.
Involuntary manslaughter.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a biggie. Listen, I sit on the board of directors for the NRA. I'm a law enforcement officer. I'm a sworn deputy sheriff in Frederick County, Virginia. I'm a reserve police officer in Pocatello, Idaho. I shoot guns on film sets. I do sorts of things. They didn't follow protocols. There was some really stupid stuff that went on there. I do think it was an accident. I do think it was negligent. Yeah. And I know Alec. I like Alec. I hate his political opinions, but I like the guy. He's a good guy. But what he's done, and he says some horrible things, which I don't support. But that's a big deal. That's a big deal. I imagine it will get pled down, and but there will be I'm sure there'll be a civil. I can't imagine criminally he'll be going to jail, but I imagine it'll get pled down, and I imagine there'll be a civil case, and it's going to cost a lot of money.
That's my guess. A lot of money. No, you're absolutely right. So, final question, sir. Look in the future. Obviously, you've done professional football. You've done Hollywood. You've done philanthropy. You've done law enforcement. You've done so much in a relatively young life. You still have decades. Lord willing,
sure hope
you
so.
Still have decades ahead for you. So what does the future for Dean Cain hold? I mean, do you have any, will you be a public servant? Could you run for mayor, governor, senator, president, or maybe Trump's vice president? Do you want to go into media? Maybe Fox News, maybe Newsmax, maybe you can go on my network or anything like that. Or is it, what, you're just going to keep going with what you're doing and hold steady there? What does the future for Dean Cain look like?
Looks very bright. I should put sunglasses on. I like to do a little bit of everything. Even in college, I was a 3-sport athlete. I wasn't just a football player. I captained the volleyball team. I ran track. I like to do a lot of different things. Otherwise, I just feel too pigeonholed. I'm a writer. I'm a producer. I'm a director. I'm an actor. Sometimes I want to write. Sometimes I want to produce. Sometimes I want to direct. I teach over at my son's college, filmmaking and acting and writing. And so I'll have, it's wonderful to do a bit of everything. I love being a law enforcement officer and standing with our men and women in blue and uniform. They're fantastic people. I want to get my EMT certification. I want to just keep on doing more things. But I really enjoyed, I directed my first movie last year. I wrote, produced, directed it. I really enjoyed that. I think there's going to be a lot more directing in my future. As much acting, absolutely. But I prefer directing over acting. I don't mind doing both, but I love the ability to storytell. When you're a director, you're putting the clay piece together. You're telling the story, and there's just something magical about that. And you make people feel. You do it as an actor, and you do it as as an artist in that sense. But it's not the same as when you're in the editing room and you're moving, we're going to change to this shot. Look how the eye tears up. I can see the emotion, all that sort of stuff. You're playing. Not God in a sense, but you're the one telling the story. And I love doing that. My father's a director, so I'd like to do a picture with him. He's in his late 70s. So he's like, I think I got one more in me. And I go, come on, Dad, let's go. That would just be a dream for me to work with my dad in a picture. And so I like doing everything. I'm going to continue doing all of it and adding to it. Now, as far as political aspirations, politics, you think Hollywood's ugly. Woo! Politics are horribly ugly. There's a possibility that I get involved, but only because I want to serve. I don't want to do this, become Nancy Pelosi and sit in office and enrich myself for 97 years. I think that's disgusting. I do believe there should be term limits. I believe we should come into office, do something, and get out. But people get so enamored with the money and the power, and there is money. There's so much money around it because everyone wants to peddle influence, and that's what it is. And that's why people stay in there for so long. I would go in to serve and get out. The idea of being governor of California boy, if I could do it for 4 years and change things, like, catch some of this rainwater that's pouring down in California right now, where 93% of it runs right back in the ocean because we're trying to save 7 Delta smelt. I mean, stuff like that just blows my brain. So that sort of stuff, and the huge water, bills. The bills that I get here in Malibu, California for my water are, people are like, that's my mortgage payment. Welcome to California. It's crazy. So I would do it to serve. I love what Governor Abbott's doing in Texas, trying to relieve property taxes there because they have a budget surplus. Fantastic. We had a $95 billion budget surplus here last year, and Gavin Newsom turned that into a $25 billion deficit by creating these stupid social programs, handing it out, it's just nuts. So that's what I would do if I ran for governor or a federal office, maybe a senator. President, boy, that's the worst job on the planet. But if I thought I could do some good, who knows? Everything's open in the future, and I may just say no to all the political stuff. But I do talk politics because there's this saying: you may not be interested in politics, but I promise you, politics is interested in you, and it's going to affect your life. And all I want to do is make things better for citizens here in California and in the United States.
Well, I am going to start the draft Dean Cain move. We're going to get you into it because I as much as you do already, I want to see what you can do as a public servant. So that's a fair warning, sir. That's the only warning you're going to get.
I'll take it.
Dean Cain, everybody. Dean Cain, thank you, brother, for being on. It is a blessing and an honor. And thank you also for promoting Genesis, preciousmetals.com. Great company, Christian company. Love them over there. Recently, I had Jonathan Rose from GenesisPreciousMetals.com join me, and I asked him what type of accounts could be rolled over into a self-directed IRA. Here's what he had to say. I would say most Americans, whether they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, they have some sort of retirement accounts. What sort of retirement accounts can they roll over? Or can you help them, I should say, roll over into a self-directed IRA?
Good question. So if it's a government plan, you can roll it over. Traditional IRAs, SEP, Roth, TSPs. If it's housed in a legal entity that's requiring it to be IRA regulated, then chances are 99.9% of the time you can roll that over tax-free, tax-deferred. And something that I think is a huge benefit when it comes to self-directed IRAs and putting precious metals in there is at some point people are going to liquidate these IRAs, right? Whether it's an emergency, fix a leaky roof, who knows, or you take RMDs, required mandatory distributions. This is the part that's interesting because at that point in time, you can cash out a portion of your IRA, whether it's in gold or silver, take the cash value, that fiat value, the greenbacks, and be a recipient of that money to you, or you can also at that point cash out but take possession of the metal. And that's what a lot of our clients do. They will slowly do these required mandatory distributions, but by holding the metals, they get delivered it to them, and that is actually a huge plus in terms of protecting your finances and really trying to bulletproof it for the future.
That is brilliant, actually. So like they have these required distributions that they have to take. Government forces them to take it at certain ages. And so instead of, taking it and now they got to pay taxes on cash, and then they can actually just have physical precious metals from the depository, take a portion of what they've purchased through Genesis Gold Group, have it physically sent to their home, and then they've got it and they just put it in their safe or something. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. It's a part of their distribution. Rather than take it in greenbacks, fiat, they can take it in the metals. And I would probably say, 90 to 95% of our clients actually, go through with that process. And to me, that's smart.
Go with the smart money. Visit GenesisPreciousMetals.com today.